Hello everybody, it's Wyron here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the Vampire Coast against the Skaven on the map Womprat Gulch. So hopefully we'll be womping on some rats here. And for this build I wanted to try something both a little silly as well as just try to make use of units I don't see used all that often from Vampire Coast. Usually when you see Vampire Coast builds, there's basically a handful of core units you're going to see in almost every build. You're almost always going to see Count Noctilus, you're almost always going to see deckhands and deckhands with polearms, and you're almost always going to see deckhand handguns. Those are probably like the core units of the Vampire Coast that you're almost always going to see. And there's a lot of units in the Vampire Coast roster that just see little to no action, and I wanted to see if I could make use of it out of a few of them here. So for my lord, I decided to bring Lufer Harkon. Obviously, Skaven have quite a few little sneaky tricks they could pull on you. They can go with Death Runners, sunder your armor, really whittle you down that way. They can bring Warp Lightning Cannons to shoot the hell out of you. They can bring lots of monsters. There's all sorts of stuff Skaven can do to you, really, because they are ultimately mostly a more mobile faction than Vampire Coast. But I decided to try to bring Lufer Harkon. Lufer Harkon does have this cool ability here, Disrupted, which happens whenever he shoots somebody. If he's on foot, it also happens when he's in melee, but unfortunately we have him on a Terrorgeist, but unfortunately for that ability, he's on a Terrorgeist, which plus 50% miscast chance and minus 10% physical resist, some great debuffs there. And of course, Lufer himself is basically a roided up Witch Hunter when he's shooting, so he has a lot of ammo, he's going to be doing a lot of hurt. Otherwise, we do have Magical Void, which grants him plus 33% magic resist. This means that stacking on top of his innate missile resist, you're looking at almost 50% damage resist to the vast majority of Skaven missile pressure. Otherwise, he does, of course, have 80 armor. He does, of course, got his Fear, Terror, he's got the Hunger. We do also have, of course, he's got his Breath Attack, Power Siphon, which is a nice Vigor and Ability Recharge penalty. We do have the Slan Gold here to debuff enemy recharge rates. Skaven, of course, very reliant on magic. All Hands Hoy and Hornswaggle. And, of course, All Hands Hoy is actually being removed in the upcoming beta patch, but nonetheless, here it is still around and kicking. Alongside that, we do have a Deathstreak Terrorgeist. This is much closer to a dragon than the normal Terrorgeist. It's got much better melee stats, or much better melee attack, and slightly higher weapon strength, but no bonus for Slars, so a pretty cool unit. More like a dragon than a normal Terrorgeist, but I figured, you know, it might be a lot of fun. I wanted to try out units that I don't see used very often. I can't remember the last time I've seen Terrorgeist. I think the only time I've seen it was early after launch when someone brought it against me when I was playing as Vampire Counts. But it's something you almost never see. Of course, with Lufer Harkon, we don't have any magic, so I had to bring a Vampire Fleet Captain with Lore of Vampires. He is here mounted on Promethean. He does only have 2 spells, Drown Dead and Invocation from the Heck, a Power Stone, and Taunt. So, good selection of abilities. He does, of course, have AP, 120 armor, 50 melee attack, 40 melee distance. A pretty respectable combat hero in all ways, really. But magic, especially, really nifty. For our backline, we do have 3 Carronades in case my opponent had gone with lots of artillery. I hadn't really gone with a super aggressive build here, so I figured that because I'm not going to be rushing my opponent straight up, I figured I needed some Carronades to apply some pressure to enemy Warp Lightning Cannons and that sort of stuff. For the front line, it's actually very cheap and very small. 4 units of Zombie Pirate Deckhands. We are abusing the Womprat Gulch here to protect our flanks a little bit. And then 2 units of Morngulls. This is, once again, a unit I don't see used very often, but potentially decent. They do have quite a lot of bonus versus infantry. They've got a lot of AP damage, and of course they do have hunger, so they'll heal in melee. And they do have built-in 30% missile resist. So all in all, an okay unit. I really want to see how they work, and especially if my opponent brought Stormmen, these guys should be pretty potent. For my opponent, though, he did decide to mob me. He outnumbers me over 3 to 1. A front line here of Gutter Runners, vanguarded and poking away at the Terrorgeist, doing a lot of work. The cannons are immediately going to start teeing off on the Doom Wheels here. For his main line, my opponent does have some Skaven Slave Slingers and Poison Globes to really apply some pressure. A massive Skaven Slaves. So a very cheap and crappy infantry line, but very wide and potentially with a lot of swarm potential. 2 Doom Wheels, Lord Skrulk here with both of his summons, Leader Bonicus and Rod of Corruption, and then 2 Rat Ogres. Fortunately, of course, Lufer Harkon does have quite a bit of magic resist built in, so he's not going to be that susceptible to all the nastiness that Lord Skrulk brings to the table. Now, unfortunately, over here, the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mob is taking a bit of a pounding from the Gutter Runners, but you know what? We don't care. They're Zombie Pirate Deckhands. They cost 300 gold, so who really gives a darn? The Doom Wheel over here is getting pounded by the cannons, which is really good for me. My opponent is trying to juke a little bit, but it's just not working out. And despite the pebbles that the Leader Bonic is going down Lufer Harkon, we're just able to tank through it. And Lufer getting some pot shots here on Lord Skrulk, really teaching him a lesson and are basically forcing him to stay away. That said, as the lines start clashing, we're going to be forced to counterattack. You can see we're sallying forward with our Morngulls and pushing into my opponent's main line. The cannonballs there, forcing off the Doom Wheel, and you know, it's a bit of a pit fight right now. Unfortunately, though, the Rat Ogres here getting Terror Routed, which is really important for me. It does mean that my opponent is going to be basically just down to Skaven Slaves in the pits here. And you can see that salvo of Poison Wind Globes just flying around, but we are going to be able to land in there with Lufer Harkon, get at the Doom Wheel, hit it with the Hornswaggle, and really start pounding it a little bit. Meantime, these Rat Ogres pulling around, but we have pushed our Vampire Fleet Captain into the fray, and we are summoning some Zombie Pirate Deckhands to stall this front line. Unfortunately, me being me, I promptly forgot about this pocket of troops, and I will forget them for quite a while. That said, you can see the cannonballs raining death and destruction on these Rat Ogres, forcing them to terror rout. The Doom Wheel here really pulverized already. The Terrorgeist getting in on top of it, and an Invocation Maniac does go down, keeping these Morngulls tip-top shape. And my opponent's army at this point already breaking. A lot of the Rat Ogres, who my opponent was really relying on to do a lot of work, have been routed off the field for most part. They are obviously going to come back, but they're in really poor shape. Doom Wheel already removed. And what does my opponent have left? He has a bunch of Skaven Slaves, he's got some summons, and a bunch of shooting, but and of course Lord Skrulk. But really, when push comes to shove, he's in a very, very bad spot right now. So we do get another summon there with some Zombie Pirate Deckhands. You can see the cannons pounding away into this pocket of infantry, trying to get some value against that blob because my opponent clumped up. That's one of those difficult things. When you have lots of short-range skirmishing troops, it's often very difficult to spread them out and to prevent your opponent from taking advantage of such blobs. It's very difficult to avoid blobbing. And so unfortunately for my opponent, that is what happens there. Over here, we are going to land on these Rat Ogres with Lufer Harkon, who promptly munches on them, just chowing down on these guys, taking down basically a model swing, and these guys are being forced to reconsider their life decisions. We do hit them with a Power Siphon, debuffing their vigor, and promptly forcing them to flee the field. Elsewhere in the meantime, my opponent definitely whittling down the Morngulls, but they are in on the Poison Wind Globes now, preventing them from firing, just whomping on them in close quarters. The Morngulls, of course, a very potent unit. We do hit them with an Invocation of the Hex, so they will be healing whole bunches, despite the Storm of Shuriken going in against them. In the meantime, though, my opponent finally does get a nice little flank here, right at the moment as I finally realized I forgot about this entire pocket over here, so we are committing and collapsing on this pocket. But my opponent finally sneaking in on the cannons, but it's a little late for that at this point. The cannons have basically done their work. They've removed the main offenders on my opponent's army from the field. The Rat Ogres are largely gone. The Doom Wheels are basically gone. These three Rat Ogres are coming back, but they're basically going to rout the moment they come close. And although my opponent here is trying to shut down my cannons and kind of succeeding, we're going to be able to land in there, hit these Gutrunners with a taunt to debuff them a bit. Dive in with Lufer Harkon, just compromising this backline. Over here, the summoned Plague Monks being forced to rout. And despite Lord Skrulk's best efforts, he's just not going to be able to hold together everything here. And over here, the Zombie Pirate Deckhands just holding their own, doing an absolutely banging job. We are able to tear up these Gutrunners. And that is going to be game at this point. It's basically just a matter of time at this point. You can see the Morngulls almost up to 140 kills here, munching through these backline troops. And that is basically all she wrote for the poor Skaven. Lufer Harkon here feasting on some poor little rats as the Carronades start pounding away at Skrulk, who is basically the last target really available. But that is basically it. The Morngulls, despite being engaged in a very delayed manner, actually racking in almost 70 kills here. Some pretty bonkers work from the troops here. So a close victory for the Vampire Coast. Now the build I used here was not necessarily optimal. I think it's a very narrow frontage combined with cannons. It's not necessarily something you want against Skaven. Had my opponent been a little more agile or a little more flexible, he would have probably been able to get a surround on me and definitely threaten my backline more efficiently. He kind of just hammered into my front line, and that ended up not working for in his favor. But with some more flexibility, with some more agility, he might have been able to compromise my backline a little earlier with his Gutrunners. The Doom Wheels, unfortunately, not really paying off. One of them did get quite a lot of kills against Rabble, but it got shut down by the Terrorgeist. The other Doom Wheel got completely pulverized by cannons and got nowhere. Rat Ogres basically just got pulped. The Morngulls, in comparison, just dicing through the front line. And the Skaven, obviously, Skaven slaves are garbage, but even against other units, they were able to munch through the Poison Globes. They were able to tear out and fight off the Rat Ogres, and so a huge contribution. And the Morngulls really contributed quite a bit there with their terror bombs and that sort of stuff. Zombie Pirate Deckhands, they did surprisingly well. That's kind of what happens when you fight Skaven slaves, but nothing to brag about. Lufer and the Terrorgeist, though, racking up some kills. Definitely doing well. Like I said, I wouldn't say this is the most competitive build. I think if you're trying, honestly, I think that against Skaven, you might be better off just going full aggro. Bring a bunch of Zombie Pirates, use Zombie Pirate Deckhands. You could probably dump the Carronades completely. If you want to go full aggro, just bring a bunch of Pirate Deckhands, bring some Deckhand polearms, bring some Deckhands with pistols, just the gunnery mobs, and you could probably overwhelm your opponent that way, and it might be fun and a fun and entertaining way of dealing with Skaven. But otherwise, I did have fun trying out units I just don't see very often. The Terror Guys performed surprisingly well. Well, it is Terror Guys. It's not necessarily bad, but it did perform rather well. Lufer Harkon did rather well. The Pirate Captain did well. It's usually you don't really see very often, unfortunately. There's just, I would say, a solid 50% of the Vampire Coast roster that you will almost never see in games. There's about 25% of the roster that is genuine garbage, but another 25 to 50% of it is just very rarely or never seen, but surprisingly decent units and a lot of fun to use, and there's a lot of potential there, I think, to mess around with different builds. So regardless, I do hope you guys enjoyed. Well played to my opponent, mid or feed here. Definitely a bit of a silly, sort of gimmicky build. I do think mass shooting is better for Skaven. I think you can go, you guys have probably seen some of my builds with just massive gutter runner slingers. And I think that's really the way to go here. Bring some death runners, bring some gutter runner slingers, and you can just overwhelm your opponent with sheer fire. You can out-pebble them, but still a cool build idea. So yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, as usual, do not hesitate to post them, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.